All right, I'm here to talk about the future of front-end with collaboration and automation. So who am I? I'm a senior engineering manager at ZOA. We're an energy SaaS company that's building solutions for next-gen energy companies. Previously, I was engineering director at Tray, which is an integration platform as a service product, a low-code automation platform. All right, I'll start with this. How many of you were front-end developers in 2016 in the room? Okay, remember when there was a new JavaScript framework launched every other day?
Every other week.
Every other, okay. It felt like every other day to me. I had to figure out what are we going to do. It was like chasing a constantly moving target as a front-end engineer. How are we going to keep up with the pace of change? And here I am in 2024 talking about navigating the future of front-end yet again. Let's breathe. What do we know is true since then? What I have felt is that it's really not about the frameworks. There'll be frameworks that come out ever so often. It's the core native language that is important. So JavaScript in this case, if you know that and you know the internals of how they work, you can pick up a new framework. Everything is a component in the modern web. So we're talking about modularization, reusability. We're talking about building components that are usable and fitting them into other components. Just plug and play, independently delivered value into your solutions. This is a hot take following from Johannes. Learning a new framework is essentially like learning a new API then. What are front-end engineering practices now? And I've put in a chart from the Pragmatic Engineer, and some of this stuff is from his State of Front-End in 2022, which resonated with me. So there are two types of programming languages that front-end engineers develop an expertise in: statically typed and dynamically typed. Usually, if you want to have a long, sustained career, you may have experience in both, or you can have experience in the more scripting side of the languages. Unit tests have become popular, so writing unit tests along with your front-end code and integration and end-to-end tests, which kind of comes after. But unit tests are important because depending on the type of platform you're deploying it on, whether it's web or mobile or native, you may have different solutions for your end-to-end. You may even want to do manual testing. Here I am in 2024 saying it because it's important. Code reviews, front-end engineers do that a lot and collaborate. This is becoming more and more. And Johan has also touched upon this. Learning how to deploy your applications. You all right? All right, so learning how to deploy your applications. And there are so many different types of cloud providers as well. So you know the Azure, AWS, GCP, but now as a front-end developer, there's also Vercel and Netlify that are gaining popularity. So what do teams look like now? And what are they going to look like in the future? You're going to have true cross-functional development with engineering, product design, and data science. Data scientists could become model designers in the AI world, a hot take from me. UX research and product management, right? So you really have to work as a front-end developer because you are going to be working on customer-facing applications or consumer-facing applications, however you may want to call it. You are working at the intersection of all of this if you are really taking ownership. Which brings me to the next slide, which is really a leadership slide disguised as a wireframe. This is about how the core skill that you need to know, need to develop now in order to remain collaborative in the cross-functional team is really having empathy for your users and for your team members. each of these disciplines have a very different way of working, but they do come together in front-end development and application development. You want to work closely on low and high fidelity designs. So it depends on who your stakeholders are, who your audience is. This is an example of a very low fidelity design, which is just like a wireframe that you can use tools like Balsamiq to put together. You can also just put them on a whiteboard, and this can be very useful when you're developing an MVP. But then you maybe want to do high fidelity using tools like Figma or using a platform like InVision, and that's really to convey your whole product vision. And that could be to your stakeholders, it could be to your senior leadership to get buy-in for how the product is going to look like at the end of the day. And I've mentioned a few other tools. If you are remote, there are so many online platforms available now where you can collaborate, like Miro. InVision has something called Freehand now, which is now also an integration with Miro that you can use to quickly ideate and plan your product development with. And in person, I'm still a whiteboard warrior, so I love that. Let's put up a whiteboard and do some paper prototyping. That's also a helpful skill. Getting involved in UX research. This is something that I'm starting to see more and more because you need to understand your customers and what are their pain points and what are their motivations, and really understanding the problem you're trying to solve for. What is the problem the product is solving for? It really builds a narrative that is holistic, that helps you empathize with your users and come up with like understanding your users' customer segments as well. So you could have demographics of like, what does the user in the UK want versus a user in North America or in New Zealand, for example. So that's a bit about understanding the segments as well. And you can work very closely with your UX researcher if that is a function that you have in the organization. Really sitting down and shadowing your users can also be helpful. If it's a software product, just seeing how are they using how are they using the existing solution, and you can gain insights into how to build something that can make their lives easier. And lastly, co-creating designs with designers. I truly believe this is great. How many have heard of double diamond development before, where you research and then deliver? I am personally a fan of triple diamond as well, which is you get some research and insight, and then you ideate and validate like a proof of concept before you actually then work on a full-fledged solution. So a little bit more involved, and also very useful if your team has the time for it. I'll move on to then automation, which is the second part of the talk. Automation as engineers, it helps us focus on what we love doing most, which is writing code. I've put together, this slide is from a previous talk that I'd done on test automation, and I've just picked up the two slides that had a lot of good feedback from that test automation talk. So I'll talk about this. It's a lot of words, I realize, but creating a document that specifies how you're going to automate testing is supremely important, and it's hard to see why it's not done more often. Just identifying all the scopes and of your categories of your applications or your systems, you may call them that, front end, back end, you may have data warehouses, you may have your machine learning models now, all of the systems, how are you going to test them? Take a stock and essentially come up with a very simple table that describes across each environment what are the different types of tests you want to run and why, and get feedback from the rest of your engineering team on what that should be. I've run a couple of, practically in every role I've had to do this because because testing is something that's often overlooked, but as someone who's on the forefront building front-end applications, you start to see where it becomes important. And then lastly, just consider the baseline metrics you want to measure as well, because if you don't measuring something, you don't know if it's really improving. And then applying that test automation strategy, right? Don't choose tools before deciding how you're going to test. So unless you have a table that says what are the list of environments and what are the systems you're going to test, don't choose the tool because it may not be right for the solution. There are lots of them available like Selenium and Cypress, and most of them are cloud-based as well now. And then customize high-level strategies for different areas. Contract testing is very popular in the big tech and FANGs. You may not want to do that if you're in a small team, but that's something to discuss when you are talking about backend versus the front end, and maybe between front end and APIs as well. Make sure that if you're, there is enough capacity in the team to run with that plan. And you may want to upskill as well certain members of your team if they were manual QA testers or quality engineers, depending on which area you want to focus on. And then lastly, testing goes hand in hand with monitoring and rollbacks, and we live in the world of continuous delivery. So don't forget that. Make sure that your pipelines are also being monitored, and you have mechanisms in place to automate rollbacks as well. And then I would also like to say that keep reviewing that over a period of time because it might evolve. Your product direction might change. So having a test automation strategy document that is living and breathing and is being reviewed every few months is very important as well. All right. Does your team have a separate web and native mobile app teams if you're front end? Or are they the same? I think that I've seen lots of variations of this. I think there's a change coming in here. Just one example of that is Project IDX by Google. I think the future is going to have more cross-platform development workflows that make it easier. So if you've been doing React and React Native and expected to do both and struggling with it, I can assure you there's something, I think that is going to change. I'll talk about automated software governance because this is a book I'm reading right now, and it's really going beyond what used to be DevOps and DevSecOps, right? Which was, just using the shift left approach to make sure you test early and then make sure the operations of your pipelines are automated. Now we need to have architectures that are constantly changing, and product strategy could be evolving in your company if you're working in a startup or a scale-up. How do you make sure your architecture evolves with it? So we will need to make sure that there's some governance in place to make sure the code you're writing is maintainable in the future, no matter where we go, and also can be extended. And there's a difference between product debt and technical debt. So you may want to start thinking about how to evolve your architecture while you're writing it. And then loads of different, there's few other options about how you can do it. I recommend reading the book. I think creating an automation competency in your organization is also one of the things I can imagine will be the case in the future. Obviously, having worked for an iPaaS, I do think that using a product that can easily integrate with your third-party APIs or vendor APIs can be very helpful, and it's one of the things that I think we need to start looking at as we go. And I couldn't have not spoken about AI. This was a tweet that I'd reposted from last year. It was about literally GPT-4 being able to take a napkin mock-up and output a fully functional website. So I don't know what the future holds, but this has been interesting. This is my last slide. So I think building a T-shaped career is more important now than ever before. And in order to navigate the future, if you've not heard of the T-shape before, you have deep skills in your foundation of your T. And it might have front-end engineering at the very base, and you might be an expert, but there's a lot of other things that can go along with it to build your foundation. And Adrian's going to talk a bit about analytics, and that can be one of the other things that you pick up alongside. Or it could be API design and development and more skills that can help you work across people as well as across the tech stack. Hopefully this has been helpful. And I look forward to questions. Thank you.